41 weeks to Madiera. Welcome back to the weekly video diary of my journey to the 2025 European Masters Athletics Championships in Madiera, and my journey as a returning senior, soon-to-be Masters athlete. And yeah, so what's going to be in this week? Well, firstly, welcome to the Henderson Memorial Park and the track. You can see it's kind of icy ground here. We've had to come out and train here as opposed to the usual University Sports Park because it's also frozen, but unlike this frozen one, we're not allowed to use that when it's frozen. So you'll have noticed so we're going to talk about the goal of the 16-200 metres in the indoors and exactly why I've picked that goal and what I'm hoping to achieve. We're talking a bit about the highs and lows of winter training, and it's all lows at the moment, temperature wise anyway, and then also just a wee bit about training as an individual as opposed to as part of a team, and some of the things I've been noticing, some of my thoughts on that even from today. So you'll have noticed that so we didn't post a video early in the week. We were planning to be out running in Northern Ireland, and the track there was also shut because it was frozen. They weren't allowed to let us on. So we're here, Henderson Community Park, and yeah, so it's really nice to get out here in the cold and see a chunk of other people running. There was a huge group of slightly older adult runners out when we arrived on the track, so that created some navigation problems trying to sprint around them, but also it just seemed that there was, I don't know, maybe a CrossFit box that was out doing an endurance session today. They were playing some music and had trendy gear, so yeah, really fortunate. So I've only got 2 more weeks till I run my first race of the season. I'm in the middle of a 4-week sprint block. I'm trying to build up my ligamentous strength in my ankles for doing the 16, for wearing spikes again, because that's really, there's probably no point I'm more likely to rupture something than in the first 10 metres of my first indoor 60 in 5 years wearing spikes. So I really need to build up some strength there in order to be able to do that. But at the same time, I'm also going to be running my first 200 metres in several years as well, and just takes a bit longer to build up the endurance, the speed endurance to run 200 metres, so that's mostly what I'm focusing on in these few weeks. Yesterday, taking my first look at the year ahead and the new year. Happy New Year. I've decided to, or I've managed to book myself onto a couple of timed races in London, 2 weeks today, or a week today, 2 weeks today and 2 weeks tomorrow, in the 16-200 at the London Indoor Games. This was the very last competition that I did, and that'll be 3 years ago now. So a bit of a psychological barrier in actually getting back there, but we just need to get back on the track. We just need to get the spikes on and run, and yeah, there's just nothing else for it. So I'm just going to get in the car here, and so my goal is to run 24.9 seconds in the 200 metres. That is the British Masters Athletics Federation Masters outdoor merit standard. So that's not like the time that you'd run to get a medal, that's the time that you need to be run to be competitive at a Masters Championship. So essentially, if only 3 people turned up to the competition, you'd have to run that in order to be able to be eligible for a medal. So it's not really a blistering fast time, but it just allows you to know that you're in the right ballpark, you're training for the right event, and that you're kind of on track. And especially at this time of the year, I know a lot of the other athletes are doing a lot of speed endurance and things at the moment, and I'm doing a hypertrophy phase in the gym. I'm really not expecting to run a fast time, but it's really nice to have a time there where you're like, actually, That's me achieved that, or I've not achieved that. And it's going to be 7.9 seconds in the 60 as well. So both of those are off my personal best, but they're within about kind of 10-20% of a personal best. So it'll be really nice to turn up. And again, the goal is just to run those injury free. If I can do that, then I can start making plans for other things. If I don't quite meet those standards, or if I do but I pull something, then it suggests that I've got more rehabilitation still to go, or maybe I'm not focusing on the right event. So really going to be a crucial point in the year. I was talking to coach today about those. He thinks that sounds reasonable, and we're also just talking about how am I actually going to get some good running in spikes indoors. So next Saturday I'm going to drive out to Kings Lynn, which is about an hour away from here, where they have a kind of quasi indoor track there. So it's kind of covered, but it's not climate controlled. But they have essentially a track that I can run there that will be cold but not icy. So it's going to be a bit of a drag, a bit of a trek, but I know I can definitely go there with spikes. And I should maybe get spikes on this Saturday as well, this Thursday as well, when we're training, just to get some of that strength in the ligaments. So onwards and upwards. The second thing I wanted to talk about today was winter training. So obviously it's just really challenging sometimes to get out in the winter. Sometimes you can have a beautiful day, it's cold and frosty and sunny, and you get warmed up and you do a session and you get in out of the cold and you have a warm shower and the whole thing feels quite good, but sometimes it's just tough. Obviously in the UK it's colder weather than a lot of athletes will be competing in, but also most really elite athletes that are going to be running in world championships or Europeans or Olympics, they will be training overseas in the winter, and at least if they're not doing that, they'll at least spend a period of about a month over the winter elsewhere, and that's just really important to allow them to do the heavy training that's uninterrupted by the climate, but also just in terms of getting vitamin D and that sunshine, and really important. So that's something that's not open to me. I'd previously done some holidays in the winter. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do a holiday in the winter this year, but I am looking at, is there other options of maybe taking a week where maybe take a day's holiday and I don't do much else apart from just work and train, maybe go and visit an indoor track somewhere. Again, indoor tracks are few and far between, and a lot of athletes will base themselves somewhere. If they are training in the UK, they'll base themselves somewhere near an indoor track so they can get year-round training. I can maybe travel to an indoor track and maybe do like sauna or sunbeds or some stuff like that to give me some warmth to kind of simulate that. Just really simulate that warm climate and do a kind of heavy training week that I can rest a week beforehand, rest a week after, and do a kind of overload week. So maybe at the end of February I'll try something like that as a kind of a treat for myself. And again, at the end of it I can maybe book in some R&R. It really also occurred to me that I got some retreat time away in a monastery this last week, which was really good, just for 48 hours, and the sleep there would have been really good, except the fact it was over New Year and I stayed up for New Year. But that's something else I'm also thinking about, is just taking a deload week where I can go somewhere that's really quiet, where I'll get really good sleep, and just spend a week just completely recovering and just doing mobility and going for walks and really low load. Maybe plan that in at the end of like a strength phase or something like that. So that's a bit about winter training. This is just really a crucial time, so that I'm establishing a good base rather than trying to do all this stuff in March, April time. Lastly, I just wanted to touch as well on the whole idea of working as an individual versus part of a team. I was watching the guys that are part of the fitness club or the CrossFit or whatever they were at this morning, and just really, it's just a really positive environment to have a team around you. And athletics is much more of a solitary sport where you decide what you really want to do. And you seek out the coaches and you seek out the expertise and you seek out the training. And a lot of the time, maybe you're training by yourself, particularly as a masters athlete. Um, but even, I remember when I was at university, they'd be saying, right, well, you do this session, but you need to go and do your gym by yourself and do your weights by yourself and stuff. Um, and I think I quite like that. And there's real pros and cons, obviously, in athletics. It's mostly an individual sport, but there's a team element. And then things like CrossFit, it's maybe more geared towards training rather than competition as a team. But there is still individual elements as well. And I think that emphasis can be slightly harder on the short term, where nobody's going to notice if I don't turn up to training, or they might notice, but no one's going to say anything. Um, and yeah, it's maybe athletics isn't as cool in some ways. It's not as attractive. There isn't a kind of lifestyle and kind of a Instagram worthy moments quite as much. There isn't as good PR around it. But I have noticed that even though during the sessions it can be quite solitary, sometimes you can be a couple of sessions before you even introduce yourself to someone. Or yeah, sometimes you can even just have really solitary people that come along, including myself. Is that on the flip side, at competition, people really do talk and camaraderie, and especially afterwards. And I found that competing around the country, just making friends, definitely found that at the Highland Games as well. There's almost just this sense of there's these other solitary people around the country, my age and ability, and we're all doing it separately. But then when we all come together, it's like, yeah, you've been doing the same thing as me, and in a completely different context, and it's really nice to see that. It's really nice to know that in some ways you aren't alone. And yeah, and also it just depends on what I want to look back on. For me, I have my own personal goals, and I really think, no, that's what I'm capable of, and I want to do that. And I think for other team sports, it's more a case of what we did together, and those friendships are as important. So yeah, just different emphases, and yeah, just even seeing that difference between the two groups today out on the track, that reinforced to me that I'm doing the right thing. I know what I'm supposed to be doing. So hope that wasn't too much of a ramble. Onwards and upwards. Next week, what we're going to do is we'll be back on the track on Thursday for my last speed endurance of this 4-week sprint block. And yeah, just try and get that in. And my legs feel like they're like tree trunks right now with all the lactate. My head is still get lactic, and we're doing hill runs, and then they did 10 200-meter sprints, which I definitely didn't do. I just don't have the cardiovascular base to be able to do that. So I did the first 3 and then the last 2, so half the session, and that had me hyperventilating with the acidosis. So just one more of these disgusting sessions. It's been 5 weeks since I did something like that. Last time we were training outdoors at a park in the 400 metres. But yeah, more of this to come. So see you next week for 40 weeks to Madiera. Madiera really does seem like a long way away right now. Just yeah, in terms of time, it's still 40 weeks, which is the vast majority of the year. And in terms of the weather as well, we just couldn't feel more distant. But we're making progress, and yeah,